Life does not ask what we want, it presents us with options. Thomas Sowell.
All right, so we're back for another deep dive. And today we've got a quote that's been bouncing around in my head for a while now, and I'm really curious to get into it with you.
Yeah, always excited to unpack these little thought nuggets, especially this one. I know which one you're talking about, and yeah, it's a good one.
So this one comes from something called pasted text, which, that already tells you it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, right out of the gate, mysterious origins.
Exactly. So let's get to the quote itself. It's from Thomas Sowell. And he says, life does not ask what we want. It presents us with options. And I got to say, like, on the surface, it sounds kind of, I don't know, almost a little bit pessimistic.
Yeah, I can see that. It's definitely not the most uplifting quote at first glance, right?
It's like, come on, I thought this was supposed to be inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where's the power of positive thinking?
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's something deeper there. And I think this is where we can kind of like really dig in. And because we all had these moments in our lives where, things don't go according to plan.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone can relate to that. I mean, how often do things actually work out exactly the way we picture them in our heads?
Right. Like I'm thinking of this one time I planned this whole elaborate trip. I had like every detail mapped out, the flights, the hotels, the itinerary, the whole 9 yards. And it turned into this like comedy of errors. I mean, flight cancellations, lost luggage, you name it. And it was just like, okay, is this what Sowell was talking about? Like, are these the options I'm being presented with?
I think it's a great example of the disconnect sometimes between what we want and what we're actually given, right? Like, we have this vision in our minds of how things should be, this ideal scenario, and then life throws us a curveball, and suddenly we're dealing with a whole different set of circumstances.
So then the question becomes, is it about accepting those limitations? Or is there still some element of choice involved?
That's the key, isn't it? I mean, so Will isn't saying we have no control, right? It's more like we might not get to choose the hand we're dealt, but we absolutely get to choose how we play it.
Okay, so it's not about like giving up and just being passive.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about like, okay, these are the cards I have now. What's my strategy?
Exactly. And I think the first step is recognizing that gap between that ideal vision and the reality. And then it's about being, resourceful and creative with the options you do have.
Okay, so it's like, even if the options aren't ideal, even if they weren't what we initially wanted, there's still a decision to be made.
Absolutely. And every decision, every choice we make closes off other paths, right? That's the nature of options.
So it's like every time we say yes to something, we're also saying no to a whole bunch of other things.
Exactly. And that can be, I don't know, a little bit daunting sometimes.
For sure. Especially if you're someone who likes to, keep your options open.
Right. But I think there's also something liberating about recognizing that, because it means that even when things feel limited, even when it feels like we don't have a lot of choices, we still have agency.
Okay, so how can our listeners, how can they use this idea, in their own lives? I mean, a lot of people listening are probably facing, some tough choices right now.
Yeah, I would say think about a situation where you feel stuck. Maybe you're feeling frustrated by the options in front of you.
Like that trip you were talking about.
Exactly. And instead of focusing on what you can't control, try shifting your perspective and ask yourself, what is within my control here?
Okay, so like what can I actually do something about?
Yeah. And how can I make the most of these options? Even if they weren't my first choice, how can I use this situation as an opportunity to learn and grow?
So like even if it feels like a setback or a detour, there's still something to be gained from it.
I think so, yeah. It's about reframing the narrative, right?
So to sum it up, it sounds like life's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure book. We didn't get to write the plot points, but we do get to decide how the story unfolds.
I love that analogy, and I think it highlights the importance of those decisions, right? Because they shape who we become and where we end up.
And I think what's really interesting about this quote is that if life isn't asking us what we want, what does that tell us about what really matters?
Yeah. Like, what are those core values, those guiding principles that help us navigate those choices even when they feel less than ideal?
That's something for all of us to ponder, for sure. All right, well, that's another deep dive in the books.
Until next time.